The journey of the most successful brand in Le Mans 24 Hours history starts with a single car, the Porsche 917. Born out of a change in sports car regulations for the 1968 season that saw Group 6 sports prototypes, the dominant force in the World Sports Car Championship, become limited to 3-litre engines, while Group 4 sports cars, which had no engine limit, had their homologation targets halved from 50 to 25 cars, the 917 was designed with a single overarching goal in mind: overall victory at Le Mans. Designed in 10 months by legendary designer Hans Metzger under the management of Ferdinand Pike, the 917 featured a 42-kilogram space frame chassis in which they crammed a 4.5-litre air-cooled flat 12 engine producing 520 horsepower, which they then upgraded to fit a 5-litre engine producing 630 horsepower, in a car that weighed only 800 kilos. The first FIA homologation visit only saw 3 completed cars, with 18 being assembled and kits for a further 7. The justification from Porsche being, well, we'll just have to take them apart to rebuild them for racing anyway. Needless to say, the board was not amused and rejected the offer of homologation. A second display in April of 1969 saw Ferdinand Pike himself with 25 completed Porsche 917 chassis, keys in the ignition of any of them, and offered the board the opportunity to drive any of them around the block, an offer that they chose to decline. The car debuted in 1969 and was incredibly unstable. They didn't stop it from coming from within 3 hours of winning the Le Mans 24 Hours, leading by 6 laps before breaking down with the gearbox problem. The 917 took its first competition victory at the 1969 season closer in Zeltweg, but suffered incredible instability issues around the rear of the car, generating lift. It was the engineer for the Gulf racing team, John Horsman, who noticed that no dirt or bugs was impacting on the bodywork at the rear of the car after a post-season test. So using some tin snips, an aluminium sheet and some tape, he fashioned a rear wing and told test driver Brian Redman to go out for a few laps. Redman returned and said, "That's it, now it's a racing car." A secret test at Daytona ahead of the 1970 season ironed out all the kinks before the debut of the 917K at the Daytona 24 Hours, to resounding success. A 1-2 victory, smashing the distance record by an incredible 190 miles, starting off an awesome 1970 season. Next up was Brands Hatch for the Brands Hatch 1000 miles, with a Pedro Rodriguez masterclass in the wet, coming from behind to win by 5 laps after an early race penalty, prompting a rival Chris Amon to say, "Would someone please tell Pedro that it's raining?" Wins at Spa-Francorchamps and then at Monza, leading in to the biggest race of the season at Le Mans. Le Mans would be the biggest challenge of the 1970 season and saw 917K models for the Gulf and Salzburg factory teams, with a psychedelic 917L in support. A soggy, sodden race turned into a dominant victory for Porsche, with the Ferrari challenge reduced to naught after half distance in the wet conditions. The first overall victory for Vic Elford and Hans Hermann, bringing Porsche its first victory as well. 1970 season continued with domination, with wins at Watkins Glen and the Österreich to take home the 1970 championship. 1971 was much the same after Ferrari, the only other factory team, pulled out, developing their car for the 1972 regulations. There was variety for the Porsche team at Le Mans, with the 917LH, the model that we are using in the TCAC series, being driven by last year's champion Vic Elford, as well as a 917-20 dressed up in the Pink Pig livery as a prototype machine. Ultimately, it would be the 917K to win once again, with Gijs van Lennep and Helmut Marko at the wheel. Yes, that Helmut Marko. The win from the 917 Martini team was so dominant that it set an all-time distance record that stood for almost 50 years, being broken by Audi in 2010, and a fastest lap and fastest average speed across a lap record that stood until 2017, until being broken by Kamui Kobayashi in the Toyota TS050. With the 917 outlawed for the 1972 sports car season, it found a second lease of life as a Can-Am car at the hands of Roger Penske's team, winning the 1972 season as a 917/10 trim. The final iteration of the 917 was in 1973 with the 917-30 Turbo Panzer. The Can-Am car featuring a 5.4 litre engine, maxing out in qualifying trim at 1,580 brake horsepower. The car was so dominant that season, winning 6 of the 8 races by massive margins, that the rule makers decided to outlaw it for the 1974 season, ending the 917's short but very successful reign. The 917 stands as Porsche's first overall victor at the Le Mans 24 Hours, so its legend status is never in question. But more than that, it turned Porsche from a plucky, underpowered, nimble underdog of a team to a powerhouse of sports car endurance racing that still exists to this very day.